Hello everyone, welcome back. So this is a quick video on how to write uh, chapter 1 and focusing primarily on the problem and its background. I will also include how to write the abstract at the end of the video. So first and foremost, even before we can write the introduction and the scope and limitation and all that, let's start with writing a good research title first. What are the things to consider when you're writing a good research title? According to scholars Hairston and Keene, making a good title for a paper involves ensuring that the title of the research accomplishes 4 goals. And these 4 goals are to predict the content of the research paper. The title should be interesting to the reader. It should reflect the tone of the writing, and it should contain the important keywords that will make it easier to be located during a keyword search. So the title, of course, is the first thing you read once you grab a book, isn't it? So of course, the title should require a little bit of your time. You have to make sure that your title is engaging and it attracts the reader. And at the end of the day, once I read the title, it gives me an idea of what it is I'm supposed to find inside your book. So the following parameters can be used to help you formulate a suitable research paper title. First, think of the purpose of your research. Second, the narrative tone of the paper, typically defined by the type of the research. So is it a descriptive study? Is it a cause and effect type or a correlational study? And maybe it's a content analysis. So these things matters when you're creating a thesis title. And of course, sometimes some thesis title also includes the methods used. Okay, so first and foremost, you need to know that during the course of the research, the title that you come up with right now when you're beginning to write your paper sometimes does not become the actual title at the end of the paper. So we can call this a working title pa lang. So typically, the final title you submit to your professor is created after the research is complete so that the title accurately captures what was done. The working title should be developed early on in the research because it anchors or focuses the study. So if you get lost along the way, and I always mention this to my students, that once you are so embedded, so engrossed with doing the research from beginning to end, somewhere along the way, somewhere around the middle part, you get lost and you don't know what to do. And the one thing you can do actually is go back to the title. It anchors your study. So like an anchor of a ship, right? If you do not want to go all over the place and be crushed by the waves, the title is sort of like anchors you down and make sure that you are still on the center of your work. Referring back to the working title can help you reorient yourself back to the main purpose of the study. The initial aim of the title is to capture the reader's attention and to show his or her attention to the research problem being investigated, which is what you want at the end of the day. Anyone who reads your paper must know what they're reading. And, of course, before you can even go inside or into the content of your paper, the title is the one that attracts you the most. So the final title is, of course, what your book would contain at the end of the day once you have finished everything. So these are some tips that you should consider when you are writing your final title. First, indicate accurately the subject and the scope of the study. Avoid using abbreviations. Okay, sometimes those abbreviations only applies to your certain field and it's not a common jargon. Use words that create a positive impression and stimulate reader interest. Use current nomenclature from the field of study. Meaning, every 2, 3, 5 years or a decade, na nakakaroon ng mga bagong terminolohiya, new terminologies that goes around your field of specialization. So therefore, in your title, you should also use this kind of nomenclature. Identify key variables, both dependent and independent. This is very important once we go to writing or creating your conceptual framework. So take note of that. It may reveal how the paper will be organized. Suggest relationship between variables are also presented during the title, right in the title. And sometimes this is quite ambiguous, but from the source that I got, 10 to 15 substantive words is enough Although some of my colleagues would want 10 to 12 lang, but at the end of the day, what we do not want is a very, very long title that it fills out the whole page of your paper. So 10 to 15 substantive words are enough. Do not include anymore the phrase a study of, analysis of, or similar constructions, because at the end of the day, it's obvious what you're trying to do in here. So titles are usually in the form of a phrase, but can also be in the form of a question. In Westmead, we do not follow the question format, we follow the descriptive format. Use correct grammar and capitalization with all first words and last words capitalized, including the first word of a subtitle. All nouns, pronouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs that appear between the first and last words of the title are also capitalized. In academic papers, rarely is a title followed by an exclamation mark. However, a title or a subtitle can be in the form of a question. What is a subtitle then? A subtitle explains or provides additional context. Like, for example, in this sample title that I put, Popoy's World. Okay, an augmented reality educational game for Philippine history. So here you have the main title and you have a subtitle. The subtitle adds substance to a literary, provocative, or imaginative title. It also qualifies the geographic scope of the research sometimes. For example, the geopolitics of the eastern border of the European Union. The case of Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine. Very timely, isn't it? So it also qualifies the temporal scope of the research sometimes. Sometimes you can also include the temporal scope or the time frame. For example, in this title, a comparison of the Progressive Era and the Depression years, societal influences on predictions of the future of the library, 1895 to 1940. Okay? The title or the subtitle can also give focus on investigating ideas, theories, or work of a particular individual. For example, a deliberative conception of politics, how Francesco Saverio Merlino related anarchy and democracy. So, of course, the individual that we're being talked about here is Francesco Saverio Merlino. So here you have several ways of doing a title using a subtitle. Okay, and I put in some more examples here. Poverty and criminality, a correlational model of the interrelationship between levels of crime and income. Okay, so this can also be another example. Diplomacy and economic relationships in regional trading blocs. Implications in the Ukraine-Russian conflict. Okay, so this is another example, and I have two more here. Now, if you're interested in where I got this article, this is the source. Okay, going forward, now we are writing in the introduction already. Okay, so the introduction, just like the title, can be a working introduction. Okay, I always mention that at the end of the research activity, once you have done all the surveys, all the methodologies, experiments that you have to go through, you have analyzed your content, you have analyzed your answers, you have concluded, you have to go back to the introduction. The same way that you have to go back to the title to create a new title that fits now your study. So the introduction is also written in the beginning, but at the end of the day, you'll be reading a lot of materials you'll be going through a lot of data, and do not make the mistake of not going back to the introduction. So once you have finished the paper, before you defend your thesis, rewrite or improve your introduction. Okay, so 3 steps or 3 moves, okay, that you can follow in order to write a good introduction. So the first move, or move 1 or step 1, establish your territory. Say what the topic is about, state the goal of the paper, why the study was undertaken, or why the paper was written. Now look at those sentences, okay? Just fill in those sentences with what it is that you are writing, what is it about, what is the goal of your study, and you have the first or second paragraphs of your introduction already. Move 2, establish a niche. Show why there needs to be further research in your topic. You have to discuss the research gap. Where is one of my students says this is the most difficult on all of the 3 steps, because establishing the research gap requires that you do preliminary review of literature. Okay, so if you have read a little bit, you can probably find your research gap, but as you go along and do more in-depth research and review of literature, this is one reason why you need to go back once you have finished everything, because by then it will be clearer to you what your research is all about and what is lacking in the literature and why you are conducting this research in the first place. And then the final move, introduce the current research, the one that you are making. What are the hypotheses that you will be testing, and state your research question. Okay? Is it clear in the introduction where the introductory material or old stuff ends and your contribution begins? This is something to take note of. Because here in your move 1 and move 2, you are going to present in summary what has been written to establish your research gap, right? So it has to be clear what has been previously studied, what is lacking, and what is the research gap, and how does your paper factor in this whole story. So move 1, move 2, move 3 is the easiest way to write your research introduction. Now, this is an expanded guide to doing your move 1, move 2, and move 3. So if you follow these bullets, you can answer these things, and then you can write your introduction all together. So you can clip this slide, you can screenshot it, and you can try to improve your introduction using this guide. Okay. Next, the following are the major elements that must be included in the introduction to summarize what has been discussed in the first 2 slides. First, the topic and the context. It has to be clear what points a reader should know to understand your paper. Next, the focus and the scope. What aspects of the topic will be addressed? What will be your research gaps, questions, and problems? Should be in there, maybe on the 2nd or 3rd paragraph. Relevance and importance. How does this research work contribute to the existing work on the topic? Now you will say, will I not be putting that in the significance of the study? Yes, but this is a quick overview. Since you're introducing the whole paper, you have to put in a paragraph there or 2 to 3 sentences. Why is it important to write this paper? Now, it also has to present the question and objectives of your research work and how they can be achieved. So a little bit mention of your methodology will also be good in this particular paragraph when you are looking at the questions and objectives. And then finally, overview of the structure, how each of the chapter of the thesis will contribute to the overall objectives. Again, the last paragraph should state your thesis statement. So these are several ways of establishing or writing your introduction. I hope you got a little bit of it, because there's so many materials on how to write the introduction, but this one will at least get you going. Okay, and then I put in an introduction outline here. Okay, so you can start with an attention-grabbing hook statement. Okay, so an attention-grabbing hook statement can be, for me, when I write for economics or for a business research, I like putting in a really good statistic. Meaning, for example, like, about 200 people died on the first day of the invasion of Ukraine, and of course, I'm not sure how many. So if it's something like that, I would have to put that right in the beginning to establish my content. Introduce the topic to the audience through a general statement. Describe the problem statement and the main hypothesis. State your main argument with the help of a thesis statement. Mention your research questions along with the objectives. Discuss the significance. State the research limitations if there are any. And conclude your introduction paragraph by connecting all the ideas logically. Now, if you notice, all of these are interrelated. So what you can do is look at these 3 slides that I have mentioned so far, I have shown so far, and see which ones will help you develop your introduction. If you notice, the introduction is a brief or a concise look at all the other subtopics or sub-elements of chapter 1. You have mentioned your statement of the problem, which is a subtopic in chapter 1. You will have mentioned a background of the study, which is also part of chapter 1. You will have mentioned your limitations and scope of the study, also part of chapter 1. And here, it is mentioned that you can also put in some significance. Why is it important? Which is part of your rationale of the study or significance of the study. So hopefully, with these slides, you can create your own good and well-made introduction. Okay. As a bonus, final part of this video, the abstract. Now, the abstract cannot be written at this point of the thesis writing. If you're just starting, then you can actually write the introduction, you can write the statement of the problem, but the abstract comes in the very last part of the process, together with the summary of the study or the executive summary. So here are some tips on how to write the abstract. A good abstract explains in one line why the paper is important. It then goes on to give a summary of your major results, preferably couched in numbers with error limits. The final sentences explains the major implications of your work. A good abstract is concise, readable, and quantitative, without just putting in, is and are or one word after every number. That is not a good abstract. So you have to make sure that you present your findings in a more readable manner. Length should not be more than 1 to 2 paragraphs, approximately 400 words, but it depends on your department. Abstracts generally do not have citations. Information in the title should not be repeated. Okay? Use numbers where appropriate. Okay? So sometimes I read an abstract that's just like more numbers than the words, and it's just not good to read. So try to make sure that your abstract is readable. So answer these questions, and you can create a good abstract. What did you do in the paper? Why did you do it? So that can be contained in your first paragraph. What questions were you trying to answer? How did you do it? And state the methods to answer those questions. What did you learn? State the major results. And why does it matter? Point out at least one significant implication. Okay, and you have your abstract. Okay. Hopefully, these slides will assist you in jump-starting your research study, because later on, I will post a video on how to write naman your significance of the study and your rationale. Okay, thank you very much for listening.